Oh boy, don't we have some catching up to do. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel by MWoo. I'm MWoo, aka Marianne, and today we have episode 7 of my knitting podcast. I have quite a few updates to share with you guys. They range from finished objects that you've seen before to finished objects that you haven't seen before, as well as a handful of new whips and some yarn acquisitions. So it should be a jam-packed episode and we can jump straight into it. Way back at the end of August, I finished the one that I'm wearing today. So this is my summer souffle top by Penrose, and guys, I am in love with it. This one is a DK weight t-shirt that has this really beautiful frill that goes like along the chest here, and it goes up around the shoulders and all the way around the back. So I decided to cast this on probably mid-August, and I think it was in my last podcast episode where I had just started it, or maybe at that point I had just connected under the arms and was doing it in the round. I'm not entirely sure where I was, but I have finished it now and I love it so much. It was my like homage to the end of summer. I did it in pink in honor of Barbie Summer, and I just love the way it feels. I knit this in the Katia Cotton Yak, which was 70% cotton, 10% yak, and like 20% merino, I want to say, something along those lines. And so it's this really beautiful, feels like cotton, but has like the slightest bit of memory, which makes it really wearable. I honestly can't stop gushing about it. It's now officially fall and I still have worn it so much. We've been really blessed and had a couple more warm days, and so I've been getting a lot of wear out of it. The construction of this is a circular yoke, and it has a pretty boxy styled body, and the sleeves, as you can see, are pretty form-fitting, and that is by design. I think Penrose, in her design pattern, she has specific details if you want to like adjust the circumference of the armholes, but I basically knit this exactly to pattern. I think the only exception that I did was that I picked up 1 or 2 extra stitches underneath the armholes, and so I think the start of my sleeve is a little bit wider than it's supposed to be, but then I ended up decreasing to the correct amount, and so the rest of it is as specified by pattern. The only thing that kind of like bothers me about it is that when I wear like a cardigan over it, you get this like bump because of the ruffle, but I feel like that's a good trade-off. It's so cute wearing it with tucked into jeans, tucked into skirts, and then on top of that, the pattern is so beautifully written. It was so easy to understand. Definitely like beginner friendly, and so if you guys are super interested in this shirt, I would 100% recommend it. The last thing that I want to mention about it is that doing the ruffle was like a pain in the butt. I was gonna swear, but I'm not gonna do that now. This was my first time doing a ruffle and it looks incredible. I would do it again 100%, but it was really finicky because she has you pick up stitches along like this area, and then you're rapidly increasing to create that ruffle. I think that's very typical of a ruffle, but because you're kind of fighting with 4 or 5 times as many stitches per actual anchor to the shirt, you have this really weird dynamic in your needles where you want to stretch it out so that you can actually knit all of the ruffle stitches, but you have a lot of resistance because it's so tight on the actual shirt. So she mentions it in the pattern and I definitely didn't listen. You should take breaks while you're doing it. My hands were cramping so much. It's just also really frustrating because you're so close to the end by the time you're on the ripple. Like, you have a wearable shirt. The ripple is like the last thing you're doing. You just really want to like cast it off, you know, so you can wear it. But take your time if you do that and know that the end result is totally worth it. But I was having a really hard time with the ruffle, and I think in part because it's the yarn that I used is like primarily cotton, I don't have a lot of stretch from that. So I think if I had done it in like a merino, or you'll see later that I did do it again in a mohair, it wasn't as bad. But yeah, just a fair warning, the ruffle was the bane of my existence while I was finishing this. The next one is a pair that you've seen before, and so this one's more just gonna be a little bit of an update, but these are my Wild Bee socks by Helen Stewart. I finished them pretty soon after finishing my summer souffle, and I am in love with them. I think they're so cute, and you guys will notice that they're actually blocked. That's just like a little side tangent. Like, I was in Toronto at the beginning of the month and we stopped by the knitting loft and I picked up a sock blocker. I went in like knowing I wanted to get one, so hence these are my first official socks that I blocked, and they look incredible. So this is what the pattern looks like. It's this really cute like bee, although I talked about how they kind of look like Harry Potter golden golden snitches, and I can't unsee them, but I think they're so cute. I did them in this really beautiful yellow tonal, which was the Sweet Sparrows sock yarn, I think in the Nuthatch base, and the color Butterbeer. So yeah, adore how these turned out. I think they're just really nice and fun. Yeah, that's a little update on this. I am planning on gifting these, so I realized as I was making them that I do enjoy doing the lace socks and I really like the way they turned out, but I was thinking about it a little bit more and I don't think I have a really big preference in terms of wearing like lace socks. I don't mind like cabled or small pattern. I just don't really like when you are wearing your socks and you can see the skin on them. And so I'm gonna gift these because I think they'll just get a little bit more wear as a gift than personally at home, and I think the socks are too cute to just sit in a box and not be loved. So yeah, these will eventually be gifted. I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again, that I absolutely adore the way that Helen Stewart writes her patterns. I have been told that it transitions also into her other ones, but I've only ever done this one sock. But the way she has it laid out is that she has it written, and then later on she also has it in a table format, which is different from charts, in the sense that like she has it separated by a table where it's like, this is what you need to do, this is how many stitches you should have at that point, and like a percentage complete. And it's just really nice and easy to keep track of what you're doing. And especially if you're knitting socks, it's really easy to keep them consistent. Even then, I'm sure I still probably messed up a little bit, but they're one of my more consistent socks, if you believe it or not, because I'm a pretty wishy-washy sock maker, which I've talked about in the past. Okay, moving on to the next finished object. This is one that you guys have also seen before, and I mentioned this already on my Instagram. So if you're not following me over there, I am by Mwu, and that's usually where I do my most frequent updates, just because it's just easier to post spontaneously. But I finished my Marysia cardigan, guys. So here she is in all her glory. I even weaved in the ends and I added in the buttons. And I made the conscious decision not to block this one. So I usually deem finished objects finished even if I haven't blocked it, but this one was an intentional not blocking. So this is like even more finished than usual. But here she is. It's really hard to like show you guys exactly, but she looks great. I'll try to insert a photo here of me wearing it so you guys can see it a little bit better. But I love it. I'm so glad that I persevered and I finished it. Can you believe that this has been on the needles for 7 months? I feel like it hasn't been that long, but also a very long time. But I checked my Ravelry and I started it back in March. She is finally done and I haven't actually worn it yet. It's been too hot, which makes me really sad. I really wanted to get it done for fall, and then it was cold for a couple days while I was like wrapping it up, and now it's warm again. So it's gonna be on hold a little bit more in terms of like being able to be worn. But yeah, I'm so excited to wear this fall. So I've talked about this a ton because it's been a work in progress for a really long time. So if you guys are interested in the process and the ups and downs, if you've been with me, you know, feel free to check out my past podcast episode. I won't go into too much detail about this. I'll just do a really quick recap. It's a pattern by Vert.And.Rose. I believe her name is Aleksandra, and she made this really beautiful like faux cabling. So all these details that you see are actually like fake in the sense, like not made in a traditional cable way. And I made mine specifically in the Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Marzipan, held with Sandnes Garn's Silk Mohair in 1015. It's a raglan shaped cardigan that has the cabling in the raglan like increases along the side, and she is beautiful and glorious. And I just picked up some plain white, they're ever so slightly like sheeny, if you can see that, buttons to finish her off. Something about mohair sweaters is a different kind of warmth. So I've been wearing it like here and there when taking photos, and the first day that I finished it, I did wear it in the morning when it was a little bit cooler, and there's some sort of like warm snuggliness that the mohair gives that just a normal sweater doesn't. So I'm so happy she's done. This is the official last show of this one in terms of like a process segment, but if you're on the fence, would definitely recommend. I just wanted to caveat that even though it took me 7 months to do, I would still highly recommend this pattern, and I have nothing against it. I don't actually know why, looking back, it was so difficult for me, but the primary reason why it took so long is because I took a hiatus on this. Part of me was saying it was because of I wanted to take a break from the summer because it was like a mohair cardigan, and then another part of me was that I was just getting frustrated with the process, but it was nothing specific to like the way it was written. It was just, I guess, like my frustration levels in terms of working with this type of yarn and stuff like that. If I was to recommend this pattern, I would probably lean towards more like advanced beginner or an intermediate. Not because it's not clear, but there are some segments of it that she, for example, details how to do the short row shaping in the back really nicely, and then after that it's kind of just like follow the chart. And once you get into the groove, it's not too bad, but there was that little bit of like, how do I transition from that section to that section that you kind of have to work through. So the last finished object is one that you guys haven't seen before on the channel, and these are my, I can safely say, fastest knit ever. And that is a pair of Sunday socks by PetiteKnit. They're a really classic 2x2 ribbed sock with a pretty straightforward, is this the gusset? I don't remember what that's called. But they knit up so quickly. They are knit in DK weight, and I kid you not, finished these in approximately, honestly, a little less than 24 hours. They just go so quickly, and I definitely think they're an amazing gift knit. I specifically made this as a Christmas gift. I think they're just such cozy like reading at home socks. And I have like nothing to say. The pattern was super straightforward. It was a really fast knit. I am now a convert and think that I will forever be making DK weight gift knit socks just because they still look so nice and they just go so quickly. I personally probably will still make fingering weight socks for myself just because I think those are a little bit more like everyday wear. I think these are a little heavier, on the heavier side, but they're so cute for just like I said, at home cozy reading, or maybe even tucked into like a pair of figure skates if you're going skating. The thing I will say about this is that the sock yarn that I used for this was Sandnes Garn Perfect, which I think is the recommended sock yarn by the pattern, and it's an 80% wool, 20% nylon DK weight sock yarn. I had a great experience with it. It knit up really nicely. It has, I think it's Superwash if I'm not mistaken, the wool in it, and so it should make a pretty long lasting pair of socks. I did notice though that it reminded me ever so slightly of acrylic yarn. Not in a bad way, but not necessarily in a good way, especially because I'm someone who doesn't really like acrylic, but I don't know. I can't exactly explain it other than the fact that when I was knitting it up, but there was just some sort of like resistance to the yarn that I've only ever experienced with acrylic yarn. So take that as you will. I will say that this one in this color wasn't as bad as another one that I bought, which actually segues beautifully into my first work in progress. So on that note, I bought some more of the Sandnes Garn Perfect in like a gray beige color to knit a slipover. This is it here. It's been on a little bit of a hold because I've been trying to finish another work in progress that I'll share with you guys shortly. But this is the Sille Slipover by PetiteKnit as well. But it's this really beautiful slipover that has this pearl bump detailing, if you can see that. So it has alternating pearl and knits in a couple rows, and it has this V-shaped texture in some other rows. And I think it's so cute. I talked about this one in my fall knitting plans video, which I will link either here or here, as well as below, if you guys are interested in watching that. And I had started it in that one. This is the one that I felt that it was more acrylic-y than the pink Perfect, which I thought was a little interesting. Maybe the dye affects the texture. Again, not enough that it bothered me that I wouldn't recommend it or wouldn't knit with it again, but definitely something that it wasn't as wool-y as I thought it was going to be. But this one is a DK weight slipover by PetiteKnit that is knit. I think you start in the back yoke first, then you pick up and you do the shoulders, and then you work the front yoke until you do the increasing underneath the armholes, and then you're knitting in the round. So I actually am fairly close. I know it doesn't look like it, but because it's a slipover, all I have left to do is just finish the body and then do the edging around the armholes as well as the neckband. So once I finish up my next project, I think this one will be off the needles fairly quickly, and I cannot wait to wear it. The pattern on Ravelry is a little weird. She mentions that it's worsted weight, but it's definitely DK in terms of like the way the yarn is recommended and the needle size. So I guess that was like a labeling issue on their part. Maybe PetiteKnit has corrected it since I last saw. I haven't checked, but it's been out for a year or so, and if it was out for that long, I don't anticipate her really updating it. Nevertheless, I did it on DK as per recommended by everything else that was indicating it was a DK. And then the other thing is that there's a section of the pattern right before you're joining in the round that is a little confusing. I personally didn't think it was as confusing, and I think it was a little hyped up in my head because I was reading a lot of the projects on Ravelry that said that it was a little more difficult to understand than they thought it was. And so I went in being like, this is going to be so complicated. It ended up being okay, but essentially because it's pattern, you're on one specific row of the repeat on the front yoke, and you're on one specific row of the repeat on the back yoke, and ideally they match up so that when you join in the round, you're joining in the same repeat line, if that makes sense. And the way she has it written, I think you're off by one. And so the way that I mitigated it was that I just did an extra row on like, I think the front, so that I was in the same line repeat. So that when I was connecting in the round. I hope that makes sense. It's not actually that difficult. I think it's a little bit more intuitive, but I guess it's a little unfortunate given she's such a big and popular designer that it's a shame that that wasn't caught in the test knitting phase or just through her tech editors. I'm assuming she has a lot of people review her work before it's published, but nevertheless, I can't wait to finish this. And I think it will be a good staple in this really nice, pretty grayish color. I'll move on to talk about the project that's been taking the most amount of my time in the last couple weeks, which is why my slipover is on hold. And that is my Lily Frill Sweater by Massimi, also known as Camille. And whoop, this is my first test knit. I am so excited with how it's turning out. I just actually casted off the frill this morning, and so it's really coming together. And this is kind of like the amalgamation of all the other stuff I was talking about, because I was talking about the frill earlier when I was referencing my summer souffle. I was referencing the fact that I'm doing something in double mohair, which was connected to my Marysia. And then, yeah, in terms of not working on the slipover, it's because of this. This is a really pretty slipover that Massimi is releasing at the end of the month in October. I've had the incredible opportunity to test knit it, and I am in love. So As a backstory, this is my first test knit. I've been trying to get into a test knit for a while, and the right one has just never come along. I've like applied for a couple and I've just never been selected, which is totally cool. When I saw this one, I was like, this one seems so cute. So I applied and I got it. I'm knitting the extra small version for her, and it's this really pretty crew necked sweater knit in primarily 2 strands of mohair. There are certain sections that are 1 strand, and it has this really pretty frill on it. And like if you can see, it has this like V-neck shaping to it, and I think it's so cute. I am knitting this in the Drops Kid Silk mohair, and it's my first time using that yarn as well. And I picked this really pretty blue greeny color. I would say it's more green, but it ever has like a blue undertone, and it reminds me mostly of blue spruces, if you guys are familiar with that tree type. They're so pretty. There's one like across the street on my neighbor's lawn, and I can't see it from the angle that I'm sitting in, but yeah, every time I see the sweater, it kind of reminds me of that. It's been a fairly straightforward knit. I've really enjoyed working on it, and I, as you guys can see, am close to the end. I have finished pretty much all of the body, the frill, the neckline. The only thing left I have to do are the 2 sleeves, which I am working on. It's kind of interesting because this front panel here is a little sheer. If you can see my hand through that, that's because that's 1 strand of mohair versus the rest of it is 2 strands. And so she has you kind of working almost like starting off as a cardigan, and then you connect in the round at a point where you are only working with 1 strand of mohair. So it gets a little chaotic in terms of like yarn strand management. I'll flip it over and expose the inside of the collar is like an end mess, and I know I'm supposed to weave them in, but I ended up tying them because I think that was just easier and less like worrisome in terms of it coming loose. Because it's my first time working with this mohair, I didn't really know what to expect. I can definitely say that it's still a pretty nice mohair. It's relatively more affordable. It was, I want to say like $11 or $12 per skein versus some other ones that I've used. For example, Sandnes Garn Silk Mohair was like $25 a skein, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Tin Silk at my local yarn store is like $14, I think. So it's on the more affordable end of mohair, even though mohair as a category is not very affordable. I will say it's not as soft as some of the other ones that I've worked with. If you have a little bit of sensitivity, I can see it being maybe a little scratchy. Scratchy might not be the right word, but just like, I don't know, tingly. I don't know how to explain that. I am thankful I don't really have that big of a like itch scratch sensitivity, so this should be fine for me. I haven't actually worn it long term, so I will keep you guys updated on that. Last but not least, both for this as well as the Sille Slipover, I'm filming process videos. So assuming those go well, they will be posted at some point. I'm not entirely sure when. I also don't know if they will go well. It's my first time doing kind of like a vlog styled process thing, so I don't really know what I'm doing, but stay tuned for those if you guys are interested in that. Okay, so I'll do one more big work in progress update and then just a quick recap of 2 other ones. So the next work in progress is one that has a story. It's not necessarily the best story, but if you guys have been following my knitting journey for a while, you would have known that back when I started this channel in May-ish sometime, my husband Ryan and I went on a long weekend cottage trip to celebrate like our 1-year anniversary. And in that local town, there was an alpaca farm, and I picked up these really, really glorious skeins of alpaca yarn. They were specifically baby alpaca, and they were so soft, and I picked up this really beautiful orange and a brown. And the plans for that was to knit up a musselburgh, which I did. I actually knit that in, I think, 2 weeks time, because in June then we went on our postponed honeymoon, which was to Seattle/Alaska, and I really wanted to have this hat for him so he could wear in our Alaska trip. And so it was this kind of really special like 1st year anniversary honeymoon Alaskan trip gift knit that I made for him. He adored this hat. It matched his style. He really likes wearing beanies, and so That was all fine and dandy. Fast forward to a couple months, I wanted to say end of August or something, we had an unfortunate incident and it fell into the wash and felted. So we now have this really tiny baby muscle burrow that honestly, it's so cute, but also so sad. So this is the original. As you can see, it's a lot smaller than what it was. Ryan has a pretty big head and he can't wear this, and like, this is what we're dealing with right now. So as you could probably anticipate based off the story that I just told, he in particular was devastated. It was an accident. Like, I don't know how it fell into the wash, and you can definitely tell which side was the outside. The brown was the outside. It's like significantly smaller. And yeah, it was kind of just an unfortunate situation. I know that sometimes these things happen, and this was definitely not a superwash, and it felted really nicely, honestly. This is like a really nice felt. But he was very, very sad. I was then, okay, like crisis mode. How do I like mitigate this? Because I knew he really liked it, and I definitely wanted him to have something like that. And so I was like, okay, how, if we go back next year for our anniversary, maybe I'll pick up some more alpaca yarn. It won't be the same, but like same like kind of concept. And then I was looking at my stash and I was like, oh, you know what? I have enough to luckily make another one. This was actually because at the time when we were at the store and I was purchasing it, it didn't have the meterage on the skein. It just told me it was 100 grams, and being a pretty knitting newbie at the time, I was like, I don't know if one skein's gonna be enough to make a hat. So we bought two, which is why I made it in this like orange and brown. In retrospect, I had plenty from one skein to make one. And so I am in the process of making him another one. We are very thankful that we have extra, and I forgot how nice it was to knit with this yarn. It's so pretty and it's so soft and silky, and yeah, baby alpaca is probably my favorite yarn like fiber that I've worked with so far. I casted this on pretty immediately after that incident had happened, and so I'm about a little past halfway because I finished the brown section and I'm now working on the orange. I won't go into too much detail because I talked about a muscle burrow a bajillion times in the past, because I made him one and then I made myself one and then I'm making my dad one for Christmas. And so same pattern, still love it. I'm making the exact version that I did last time. The details on that are in the original Ravelry post. The only change that I did make is that instead of just doing a traditional 1x1 rib, I am doing like a half twisted rib. Long story short, we were very sad. We are very thankful that we have extra, and so I am making him a second one. And now that I have this one that's been felted, I don't really know what to do with it. If you guys have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. I'm scared to like cut it, but I think it would be cute to make like a mittens, you know, like if I was to sew like a mitten shape and have like felted matching mittens with the hat, I think that would be pretty cute. And because it's felted, it would be pretty warm. And if I sewed it with a blanket stitch, I don't think it would fray or unravel. At this point, honestly, I don't even think it would unravel because it's been felted. And I definitely have enough to make like an orange and a brown one, or we could do like orange on one side, brown on the other side. I don't know. Alternatively, I leave it and turn it into like a baby hat. I don't even know if like my nephew or my niece would be able to wear it. It's like pretty small. And then I think it's a lost cause, but if any of you guys know how to stretch out felt, I feel like this is a pretty bad felt. I don't think that's the option to go. If this was not knitting up as fast as the original one did, and I think it's because of the twisted rib, I flew through the stockinette portion of the brown section, and then the twisted rib section has been taking me ages. Moving on to just do like a speed round of progress update. I mentioned that I started this alpaca hat for my dad. Haven't made any progress. This is where we are at. Yeah, this one got put on hold because now I'm working on the other one. But once that one's done, I'll transition back to this one. And the plans for this one is just to do stockinette tube. No ribbing, no purling, no anything. Just a blue and white striped stockinette tube. This one quickly is made in the Lands Yarn Jawoll Superwash, which is a 70% wool, 20% nylon Superwash sock yarn. I think it's a pretty popular sock yarn, pretty affordable. I picked it up at my local yarn store back in August when they were having a sale. So I think a skein of it was like $4 or $5, which was really nice. So that will be a hat for my dad for Christmas. I added 2 more colors onto my half scrap blanket. This one here is just like a purpley brown, and then this one is one that my sister gave me. I don't know what it is, but she is making a little bit of progress. I really like all the colors together. If you guys are interested in making something similar, it was inspired by the Pearl Soho Prism blanket slash the pre-published version of Laura Penrose's Sweet Shop blanket. Sweet Shop blanket, I think is what it's called. So if you're interested in making a version of those, please reference one or both of those patterns. The Laura Penrose one, if I am not mistaken, is very, very similar, if not the same construction. I saw a podcast where she was talking about it and I really wanted to make it. She didn't have a pattern at the time, so I just kind of like made it up myself. But based off her description, I think we're doing it similarly. And then the Pearl Soho one is a free pattern, but the triangles are bigger. But I don't think that would be difficult to make smaller if you did want to make that as an option. That's a little update on this one. I think she's looking so cute. I'm definitely not making a ton of progress, but also this is just in the back end whenever I kind of want like a palette cleanser because it's just garter stitch, which is really relaxing. Okay, I think that is the end of all the projects. How many was that? Was that like 10? I don't even know, I lost count. But we'll quickly do yarn acquisitions. So I have gone through a couple of them already because a lot of the stuff, not a lot, but some of the stuff that you saw today, like the Lily Frill Sweater, as well as the Sunday socks and the Sille Slipover, those are all new yarns that I purchased since the last podcast that I have now casted on. I also, at the same time as purchasing the Perfect yarn, I purchased some Tin Silk Mohair. This is in the color 3511, which is this really pretty like peachy pink, and my plan for this is to make a souffle top. So that is the version of this but in mohair. Fun fact, my sister and I got tickets to Taylor Swift when she's coming to Toronto next year, and so my plan is to make the souffle top for that trip, kind of doing the like lovers era vibe. Because it's in November, I wanted something to be a little bit warmer than just like a tank top or something. And so I settled on mohair, and I think that would be so much fun. I had a lot of fun making this one, so I think it will be a lot of fun making it in the mohair. So yeah. The next couple of yarns are all from the same place, which is Fireweed Fiber Co.'s. I was graciously gifted a gift card from one of my closest friends for my birthday a while back, and I thought I would treat myself and get some sock yarn from them to kind of celebrate fall. And I picked up 5 skeins. These 2 colors is this really pretty like off-white with like a blue and like purpley pink in them. And this is their Cold Winter Morning, which I really want to make the Melides top with. I know that the Melides top is probably more of like a summer top, and I think the recommended yarn is the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. But I think it would be fun to make it a Merino superwash and kind of have it as like a layering piece in the winter. And I think it would be really cute in this neutral with a little bit of fun in it. So that's my plan for those 2, or some sort of tank top, if not the Melides top. I also picked up this really beautiful deep purple, which is called Aubergine, which is the other name for eggplants. And I loved this one so much. Thinking a sock. I think the other ones are all socks, because I just got 1 skein. And yeah, it's so pretty. So fall-y, in my opinion. This one here is Chai, which is this really pretty orange. This one is more fall than the aubergine one, but love, love, love this one as well. Also Sweet Pea sock yarn. And then this last one here, when they posted it on Instagram, I really, really wanted it, but they said that it was going to be like a special colorway exclusively for Knit City Montreal, which was held, I think, in May this year. And I cut my losses because I was like, oh, I'm not going to Montreal, I'm not going to Knit City. But they had a couple skeins left, and so I picked one up, which this is the Basilisk, if I'm pronouncing that wrong. That's the name. It's this blue gray with flecks of purple, right up my alley. And this one here is in their violet socks. So the other ones were superwash, 80% superwash merino with 20% nylon. This one is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon. So it's got a little bit of cashmere and it's so soft and luxurious. But that's all I have today, minus the sock blockers that I picked up that I mentioned earlier. Little teaser, I have at least 2 sweaters quantities worth of yarn coming in the mail. The knitting loft that I went to at the beginning of the month was having their anniversary sale this last weekend, and so I placed an order there. More so to pick up yarn to support the fall knitting plans that I talked about in the last video. I think I also picked up like 1 or 2 balls of sock yarn, which should I have? Probably not. Did I? I did. I'm at this point where in my projects I'm like pretty far in, so I'm kind of having cast on energy, which I'm not entirely sure what I want to do next. Maybe a pair of socks, because I have a lot of sock yarn that I've been hoarding, and I definitely want to do like shorty socks. I feel like I'm not really big of a high cuff person, so I'm gonna try to make a couple shorty socks and see if I like that. Typically I wear just like store-bought ankle socks a little bit more often, so maybe if I make some shorty knit socks, that will convince me to wear those, because I find that I don't really gravitate towards my sock collection right now. Not because I don't like them. Part of it is because I don't want to wear them and ruin them, which I know defeats the purpose. Like, you're meant to wear these things to love them. But also I just think that like the high cuff ones, they're just not as comfortable. So probably try casting on those. Definitely need to finish my test knit before the deadline, and we'll see where the next couple of weeks go. I'm really excited to be more in sweater knitting weather. I've been really enjoying knitting on DK weight. A lot of what you guys saw today was DK, and so I'm excited to have that trajectory going on a little bit more. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and catching up with me. If you have casted on anything new or are midway through a project or got new yarn because of the fall, let me know in the comments below, and I will chat with you guys next time. Bye for now. That's definitely a vibe. Oh my god, it's so small. Kind of looks like a chef hat.